Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah.
How are you all doing? Good. How many of these types of programs do you attend normally in a month, would you say?
Every other month, every third month.
They happen regularly, but you budget time for maybe every other month, something like that. Nice. Yourself?
Just one specifically?
Yeah, or any of them.
Usually once a week.
Once a week. Wow. Nice.
It's my first one.
First one. It better be good then.
First one as well.
First one as well. Welcome. Thanks for coming. Any of you? First one? Oh, great.
Then the one other.
One other meeting like mindfulness and progressive thinking, stuff like that, right? Nice. It's good that there's so many available. You've been here to many. I recognize you. Thank you. First one, great. Okay. Shall we?
Yeah, do it. So I think you're all comfortable with Vaisesika now, but I'll do a quick intro. You're here at a Conscious Living at Salesforce event, so welcome and hope you enjoy the session. You're at another monthly installment. Vaisesika comes and talks with us monthly, so be sure to join the Conscious Living at Salesforce chatters to stay tuned and make these events. And we welcome Vaisesika back after a couple months, so welcome back.
Is that me?
Vaisesika Dasa is a veteran monk, author, and spiritual guide who's traveled the world sharing his knowledge that he's gained from over 4 decades of Bhakti yoga practice and his dedication to spiritual entrepreneurialism. He's having spoken at corporations, universities, and nonprofits. He's taught universal principles of spiritual personal development.
I'm going to use it
Renowned
during the
for his
meditation.
wisdom and inspiring speech, he really has a way of making ancient yoga wisdom and practices relevant and accessible to us in today's modern world. So with that, welcome Vaisesika.
Thank you very much. And as usual, very happy to be back here at Salesforce. How's the microphone for you all? Can you hear? On a scale of 1 to 10, should it go up? A tick? It could go up? Can we go up a tick? I don't know who I'm talking to. Okay. I'm going to stand here and I'll sit there when I sit down because I like to sit sometimes too. It's a honor to be back here with all of you and just to take this time to look inwardly. It's a resource that's available to all of us, but oftentimes because of the fast pace of the world and the way in which I'm externally oriented to the world, I don't really get a chance to look inwardly, and it does help when we're all together. Of course, anyone can do this at any time by him or herself, but when we deliberately do it, and we take a little time to think about deliberate spiritual intelligence, I call it DSI, then it becomes more natural for us to do that because there's a lot of resistance. Today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, and that is drawing upon nature for lessons, especially for mindfulness. Okay, I need our technical team. I'm going to have to come back to this, but I don't know why that's... It's coming from that. Oh, from the laptop and not...
Isn't that the one that's connected to the speaker?
See what I was saying about external focus? It just comes naturally. So the reason I like this lessons from nature on mindfulness, life lessons, is because, and it's not just from nature, it's from the world around us. It's from events that happen in our lives. Really, wisdom, a good definition of wisdom, at least one that I like very much, is a person who is wise is one who's able to take a lesson from every circumstance in life. And what to speak of drawing from the natural environment or from the artificial environment around us. Being mindful means really looking at things as a source of teaching, how we can refine ourselves and become better. And here today I'll be presenting a few of the lessons that come from the ancient yogic texts that take lessons from nature. So the first comes from an old story about the sage who had 24 gurus. In Sanskrit, guru means heavy. And it refers to a person who's heavy with knowledge. So a guru is really a teacher, who's kind of a wise person. So this sage lived in the forest all by himself, and one day he met a king named King Yadu. And Yadu was going through the forest with his retinue, really in the wilderness. And he met this sage. And don't be alarmed by the appearance of the sage. He used to be a Sunday school teacher. I'm just kidding. But when the king met this sage, he talked to him and found that the sage was a highly enlightened person. So he said, how did you become enlightened in the way that you are? And the sage replied that I have my 24 gurus that I live with here. And the king looked around and said, sorry, but I don't see anybody. It's a wilderness area. And then the sage began to explain that here are my teachers, and he pointed them out one by one. The first one he pointed out was the earth. And of course, from the earth on whom we exist, we can take many lessons. And oftentimes, earth is referred to by a certain moniker. What ways do we refer to the earth sometimes?
Mother Earth?
Yes, Mother Earth. That's what I had in mind. Why would you say we call her Mother Earth?
Because we all came from her.
Yeah, we all came from her. Any other reasons? What do mothers do? Healing, feeding, yes. And like a more general word, like nurturing, right? It gives birth and also nurtures. So from the earth, who's the nurturer, the sage learned tolerance, because of course there's a selfless way in which mothers take care of their offspring. The children may be grateful or not, but the mother goes on nurturing and is very tolerant, and even though the offspring may be unappreciative of what gifts she's giving. Now this is a special lesson we prepared for you in how to remain focused.
And you were saying Earth?
And I was saying earth, right. And so one of the stories from the earth comes in a book called the Srimad Bhagavatam. And here, actually, earth is referred to as Bhumi. This is a personified form. Everyone say Bhumi. This is a name for earth. So Bhumi, as earth personified, gives a soliloquy. And she's talking about her perspective, because this is one of the other lessons we can learn from Mother Earth, Bhumi. From her perspective, she sees people coming and going rather quickly on this planet. And she notes the kings come into this world, people who want to rule over the planet. And they mark out a certain boundary, and they say, this is my land. And then she says, they're not satisfied with just the land, and they say, then the ocean also, this is mine. When I was a kid, I always wondered, how do you demarcate the ocean and say, this part's mine, that part's yours? Because the water in the ocean is always moving from side to side. Who gets to say who owns what? And really, if you look at political boundaries anywhere, they're constantly moving. In America, if you look at a political map just a few hundred years ago, you notice that there weren't a lot of lines, and then their lines started appearing. Louisiana used to belong to the French, California was Mexico. There are a lot of movements of demarcations. Who says who owns what and when and where. And I may raise a flag in a certain area and say, I own this place. But a few years later, there's a different flag and a different marker. But people become very attached to it. In fact, as Bhumi says, from her perspective, when she's speaking about observing how people come and go on this earth, that they'll die for it, they'll spill blood for a certain boundary on the earth. thinking that I have to own this area. She said, but to me it's ludicrous, because of course in geological time, as we're coming and going, it's very quick. When I spend time every October, November in India, and around that time of year there are these little bugs, they call them Diwali germs. And they're born in the late afternoon. They have their lifespan during the evening. They go to Home Depot, get all their stuff. They get health insurance, whatever else they do. A lot of them that I notice congregate around a big light bulb, and they think that's really the center of the universe. And by morning time, millions of them are all dead. Their whole life cycle, gestation, birth, and their multiplication, breeding, it all takes place within one evening. And I think that's such a small period of time. But to Bhumi, looking at all of us coming into the world and thinking, this is a big deal, and this is a long time, I have maybe 100 years, to her it's a blink of an eye. It's less than the time that these Diwali germs are born and died. And they also take for granted that the light bulb is a big idea, and that's this is the center of the universe and so forth. So from a bigger perspective, this is the lesson that the sage took from the earth. See like the earth sees. See from the bigger perspective. We're here just for a few moments, and then we move on to another place that's unknown. And while we're here, why become so absorbed in a certain boundary or in claiming so many things to be my own when obviously they're going to come and go? And also be a nurturer. This is the lesson he learned from the earth. And nurturers are very tolerant of others. They think about giving, and they're tolerant as they give. The earth is abused by many people, but still she goes on giving. This is the lessons that the great sage learned from the earth, and we can too. So I'm going to, at intervals, don't be alarmed, but I'll stop at intervals and I'll take reflections. That is, anything that you hear that sticks in your mind, like if you get a little seed idea that you think I can take this out and maybe use it later on, I'll ask you just to report back as a reflection. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Say yes.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. So from the tree is a selfless server. So the idea of selfless service is actually, if you orient yourself towards service, you'll feel naturally happy, because in the flow of service there's abundance. Part of the reason is there's not much competition. When you're thinking about actually doing service, if you walk into one of your meetings here at Salesforce and you're thinking, how can I serve the meeting? How can I contribute in such a way that it benefits everybody here? Your vibration will be very different than if you walk into the meeting and you're thinking, how can I dominate and how can I take over this meeting? And generally in life, those who want to dominate and take over are prevalent, and there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of friction. Right? When you change your vibration and you change your attitude towards selfless service and think, how can I do good for others, you actually move into the mode of abundance. And also, you become very welcome wherever you go. You become a benevolent force in the world. Dale Carnegie wrote a book called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. One of the points he makes there, which I always appreciated, was whenever you feel yourself overwrought with anxiety, he says, think about ways in which you can do good for others, because it takes you out of the small world of your mind and into the larger world of abundance, where service is prevalent. And you might think back in your life to times when you volunteered for something, where you thought, let me just do service for others. I remember when I was a kid and there was an oil spill that came into the San Francisco Bay, and a group of us as high school students volunteered to go down and save birds, and we find them along the shore and bring them to the bird shelter, and then they'd clean them off and let them go. And we weren't getting paid. We weren't thinking of it as an entrepreneurial endeavor, but we all felt happy because it was an idea of service. So the sage learned this kind of abundance mode from the tree. The tree, of course, is always there as a servant. If you approach a tree, it can offer you many things. Like what things?
Shade.
Yeah, shade. Nothing like a tree on a really hot, scorching day. You go there and immediately you get shelter. Sometimes I see in other countries people take more advantage of trees. They'll sleep under the trees, which is interesting. They stay warm in the winter and cool in the summer. And what else do trees give as service? Yeah, definitely. I mean, with a tree that I have a tree in my backyard where I live in Burlingame, and actually it's not in my yard, it's in my neighbor's yard, but it's a persimmon tree. And you notice every year that everyone comes. The crows come, the squirrels come, and they all feast. For over a month, they're just feasting. Sometimes the squirrels, after eating a whole persimmon, are just kind of hanging over the fence like this. And free of charge. There's no price tag on them or anything like that. And what else does a tree do to offer service?
Oxygen.
What is it?
Oxygen.
Yeah, that's a good one, oxygen. Yeah, trees give oxygen. We're breathing because they're putting out valuable oxygen. And even after the sage noticed if someone cuts a tree down, first of all, it doesn't complain, and second of all, it goes on serving even after it's cut. It provides firewood or wood for shelter. So the life of the tree is an example of service, selfless service. And actually that's the mantra that I use in the organization that we started, because serve selflessly. Because this is the mode in which we actually feel alignment with the universe and we actually feel happy. And anyone can try it at any time. Just offer selfless service. Do it service for service. Don't think about, like, what am I going to get in return, including any kind of recognition. And if you do it, like if you secretly serve somebody, do something and they don't know who did it, you'll notice that you grow, you become bigger. So it seems paradoxical, but we grow by giving. The more we give selfless service, the more we actually expand our capacity, and the more we live in abundance. And the more I try to take, then actually the more I become constricted. It's an interesting phenomenon, but this is the lesson that the great sage learned from the tree, and that anyone can take with him or her to expand one's abundance in life and one's happiness quotient. Now I warned you, so before going on to the next slide, I'm going to take a few reflections. Reflections are really easy because it just means anything that you heard so far, whether it's a fragment or a complete idea, that you can feed back for the rest of us to amplify it. Yes?
So, in my previous experience, I thought that I was growing by being the selfless service, but in the environments, at the end of the day, we want to grow our career, and to be able to do that, we have to get recognized. And I've seen how people actually take advantage of me.
Are we using a microphone, or is there somehow magically things in the...
There is. I mean, we can, for better.
Can you all hear back there what she's saying?
Yeah.
You can hear?
Yeah, magic.
Okay, magically. There, let's even use that.
Yeah, so should I go up?
No, I'll reiterate, because this is a classic. When we talk about service, when we talk about humility in the corporate environment, inevitably, next thing we think, well, won't I become a doormat? And then won't everybody pass me over? And how am I going to get promoted if I don't self-promote and things like that?
Right, so,
Hold that
I
close.
actually don't want to be a tree that gets cut down. I actually want to stay alive, and because I understand that it helps me to grow as a better person, but at the end of the day, I need to, I need to grow my career, and I have to be able to afford living, and other things come along. And at one point, I was really frustrated that people would take advantage of me because of my willingness to serve.
Okay. Now, I just want to address that because it's a very important point and it's very practical. And I would suggest, and in fact, I studied business myself, and I've been an entrepreneur in my life. And one of the great mantras of entrepreneurialism really is, see how many people you can serve. That's how you become successful. The more people you can serve, the greater your enterprise will grow. And really, that's what Salesforce is about. In fact, we were at Intel a couple days ago, and I noticed something very interesting. When we were checking in at Intel, the receptionist had a little placard on her desk, and her moniker is Premier Service Agent. When we were checking in, I noticed receptionist called Premier Service Agent, and I thought that's an appropriate point. Now, I self-promoted just a minute ago because I said that one of my sayings is serve selflessly and so forth. So I would just like to suggest that there is a way in which to be a servant, be in an attitude of service, and at the same time be promoted and not simply be a doormat or not be cut down. And I'm not advocating that you leave yourself open to be cutting down. I'm just saying that when a tree is cut down, which even in the best of circumstances in this world, there are times in which we may find ourselves being cut. And to take advantage of that and to be able to take the lesson of service as we do, the two ideas aren't mutually exclusive necessarily, but there's an art to doing that. Yes?
Oh, I just want to comment. So, I mean, not all trees. So, for example, there are trees in Africa where, when being fed
Is that microphone on? Or
Hello?
there we go. Yes.
So when this tree is being fed on by, let's say a giraffe, it will let a pheromone signal go, and trees around it will change its flavor profile, become bitter, so that that same animal won't prey on the next tree. So there are still like survival mechanisms where, a tree is a living, life form, and I feel like almost all life tries to survive. It doesn't just kind of let itself be taken necessarily. I mean, when you think of a plant, you don't think of it, as an active, entity that can exist, but they still can. A lot of plants still can.
Yes, it's fascinating, the intelligence that's there within nature, and we can learn from that too. We could extend the metaphor of a tree, which I'm giving in a very simple way right now. But when I'm thinking of trees, I grew up in California, and I think of the peach tree that we had in our front yard, which fed the whole neighborhood every year. We took boxes of that. And from the seeds then grow more orchards and so forth. And there are exceptions. There are trees, obviously, that you wouldn't want to eat from because they'll be poisonous and kill you. So in this example, I'm simplifying and giving the basic principle.
A couple of reflections.
Reflections, yes.
The things that came up. One of the things that we all go through, I believe, is the timing. We all go through the stages at different times and have the gatherings, right? And to your point, when we're given something or when we are taking something, it just triggers the same place in the brain. So we can't really understand the difference between the given and taken when it comes to just the signals. That's why we feel happiness both ways. And sometimes getting help is the same as given help. It's being a part of the whole, the earth, the whole universe, that makes a difference. And sometimes where you're in the selflessness, or if you're taken or given, or if you're being taken advantage of, based on my observations and when I become self-aware of what's going on, it sometimes is reflected in how we analyze it, how we interpret it. But it doesn't have to be the same interpretation throughout. So we all take our lessons, but it might change by time and stage and where we are. So I don't think there is one rule, in my opinion, on being selflessly giving can make us like doormats. And in fact, in the change in business as well, when we talk about the really successful platforms like Airbnb and so on, when we even look at the technology, the way they become successful is giving more to the users, being more service to the users so that they can grow on it. So there are different samples that we can pick up, I guess, even when it comes to the business.
Sure. And in the equation of talking about what it means to be selfless when you serve, let's just think about when you give something with the intention, when you give it out of love. Is there a difference in the effect when you give something out of love to somebody, or if you give it because you're expecting something in return? Is there a difference in the experience of the person who receives it and the person who gives? This isn't a rhetorical question, I'm actually asking you. What do you think? Can you see it? Is there a meter that you can hold up and measure the difference between the two? Like it has a giving meter, and then it moves it to the side of that. No, but we sense it. For instance, if somebody gives you something really out of love, they're not expecting anything in return, which is really rare, then what is your response? How do you feel? Good, okay. It's really hard to reciprocate that. And why? It has its own force. And so the inner intention of why we're giving and how we're giving has a force in the universe. It's actually metaphysical. It's not something that we can measure on the physical plane. And this is what we're talking about when we come to the attitude of service. And obviously, it's not, I don't mean to oversimplify the point, because there is a way in which we have to interact with the world. For instance, when we talked in this assembly about forgiveness, we also gave the caveat that if somebody's bullying you or if somebody abuses you, it doesn't mean that you simply forgive them and walk away. You have to do due diligence to take care of the problem. However, internally, you have every right and the impetus or the prerogative to not hold on to it. You can let it go yourself. So I appreciate all the nuance that all of you brought up into this. But it's a metaphor that does lend to a lot of different nuance, and so does the situation, because it's a situation that is giving and learning to serve that also has a lot of different components. For instance, if you try to serve somebody and they don't want a service, one time I took jackets, because someone told me the homeless people in San Francisco need jackets, so I took clothes and tried to independently give them to some of the people in San Francisco. They said, "Get out of here." They didn't want new jackets, and I was shocked. And I went home feeling morose, like I tried to do something nice, and I was rebuffed. And this is a case in which, I was thinking do some service, but people couldn't accept it. So there are a lot of different combinations and permutations of this issue. But the principle of giving selflessly is something that you can experiment with, and you'll see that it has its own force and power. And this is the essence of what the sage was taking from this. The next was the Karari hawk. One day, the sage was sitting in his meditation, and he heard a fracas going on in the air nearby. And he looked up and he saw a small hawk, a Karari hawk, alighting, and he was holding a mouse. And just as he was gaining altitude, two bigger hawks assailed him and grabbed him and wanted to kill him for the mouse. And so what do you think he did? That is the small Karari hawk. What do you do?
Like your mouse?
Yeah, that's right. So the mantra and the lesson here is drop the mouse. If you're in a situation that seems intractable and you're seeing that it comes to the point of destroying your life or pulling you downwards, analyze that if you just drop the mouse and move on. And that's what the Karari hawk did. And when the sage watched this, he felt in an instant, there are so many things in life that I don't need to hold on to. When I let them go, it actually frees me up for a much bigger perspective in the world. That there are other things just waiting to fill that gap. I don't need to hold everything, especially when I see that it's an intractable situation where I'm being threatened by that situation. Let it go. There's plenty more things coming your way. And this is one of the lessons that the sage took, was the lesson of non-attachment. And one that I'll mention a little further on, which I like very much, was just called preemptive giving. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute. Next lesson he learned was from watching the crane. And I actually, after I read about the crane, I had the opportunity recently. I just came back from overseas, and I was in an area where there were cranes. And I sat and watched them for a while, and I was impressed with their power of focus. A crane stands in one place and has its beak pointed towards the water and its eyes fixed in one place. What do you think the crane is doing that for?
Hunting.
Yeah, for what?
Food.
Yeah, what kind of food? Fish. Exactly. So it's very focused, and it stands there completely still and waits. And it's patient. Can stand there for a long time, longer than I cared to sit there sometimes. And then all of a sudden, when the right fish comes, then it immediately goes right to the point and takes the fish. So from this, the sage, from watching the crane, learned the power of focus. And this is one of the tenets of yoga, that to focus the mind and practice focusing the mind and the attention span is the most beneficial of all activities that we can do. According to the Yoga Sutra, one of the original books on meditation, to be able to hold one's attention in one place for 7 seconds is a great achievement. I may not, this may sound astounding, 7 seconds may sound like a short period of time, but if you actually challenge yourself and start practicing focus, you'll notice that it actually is a long period of time for the mind, because the mind's so ethereal that it's constantly changing and moving. So to develop focus actually gives us many, many advantages. One of the greatest assets we can have in our life. And patience, another lesson from the crane. He's waiting for what will come his way. Meanwhile, he's prepared. And he prioritizes, because he doesn't take every fish. He waits for the right fish to come and then takes it. So these are the 3 lessons he learned. And following up on the idea of focus. That focus, this is my own theory I'm putting forward, but that is that focus is nectar and distraction is torture. When I'm able to actually focus on one thing and be fully, which means being fully present in the moment, taking care of one task at a time, I can actually experience nectar in the moment, being in the moment. Whereas when I'm being pulled in every direction, as is said in one of the original yoga texts, Bahu Shakya Hyanantascha, Buddhayo Vyavasayinam, when it's hard to focus your mind and you allow yourself distractions, then it goes in many branches and pulls you in many directions at the same time. And this is a kind of torture, even though I may not be aware of it. So getting to focus is very powerful. And the ability to do so, to concentrate on one thing at a time, is extremely useful in life. In fact, recent studies show that multitasking is not actually effective. We can do many things at a time, that's true, but we can't do them well. But if we focus on one thing, not only will we experience a kind of happiness from being in the moment, being focused on one thing, but we'll also be more efficient in getting it done, and it'll be done much better. So, yoga wisdom number 1, develop your attention span. So this is something worth practicing just as you practice other things in your life. You stay physically fit and so forth. If you practice keeping your attention in one place, or learning the art of meditation, whereby you can actually taste nectar from being in the moment and realizing the difference between your life and your life situation. As defined in the yoga literatures, you have your life, and your life is you. It's you as as a conscious being, and your life situation is all the things you're involved with that are going on in the world. And those things are passing, and they're moving at all times. So the point here is that there's a difference between your life and your life situation. Does that ring true with anyone, or does that aphorism sound accurate to you at all? 1 yes, 2. So, shall we do an experiment in consciousness? Because this is a seminar called Conscious Living. Would you be up to a guided meditation for a few minutes to try to get into that space where we can observe inwardly?
Yes.
You got to say yes, otherwise.
Yes.
Okay. So, oh, thank you. So find a comfortable position to sit in for a moment. And close your eyes. This is called focused attention training. Focused attention means the ability to direct your attention where you want it to go, to become aware when your mind has wandered, the ability to redirect your focus, and the ability to be aware of your awareness, to be aware that you're aware. So with your eyes closed, prepare to look inward. Release yourself from all your responsibilities. Bring your attention to your breathing. Mentally say in on the inward breaths and out on your exhalations. See each breath that you take as a gift, the source of your life. You're now walking on a soft, golden brown pathway with a tangle of green trees and flowers on either side. At the end of the pathway is a yellow door. As you push the door open, you are greeted by an expanse of soothing light. The light envelops you, and you feel warm and safe. You've entered your inner world, the place in which you can taste the nectar of your own consciousness. Close the door to the outside world behind you and be fully present. Remain unattached from any thoughts. Observe them, but don't engage them. You are a dispassionate witness with no need or responsibility to react. Now take a deep, natural breath. And on the exhalation, relax your feet. Let them go. Relax your legs. Relax your abdomen. Let all the tension in your chest go. Let your back become slackened. Relax your neck. And now let the muscles in your head and face become relaxed. And in that relaxed state, breathe and be conscious of the inward and outward breaths. Feel positively that you exist. And observe one by one your hands. Observe your legs. Your head and your hair. Notice that you are the one looking at them, but none of them is actually you. You are separate from the things that you see. The seer and the seen are different. Feel that you are not the body. Now see your thoughts. And feel that you are not your thoughts. Remain in this space and listen to a sacred text from the Yoga Wisdom. The sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything, although it is all-pervading. Similarly, the spiritual essence situated in transcendental vision does not mix with the body, though situated in that body. Thus, knowing yourself to be a transcendental being, steady your mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence. Before leaving this space, remember that your point of power is always in the present moment. Now, step outside the door and greet your life situation, remembering that your life and your life situation are different. You can rub your palms together and then hold them a few inches from your eyes and then open your eyes. And then gradually come back into the room. And now we'll take a few reflections from anything that you experienced while we were in this meditation. Yes.
Just a sense of peace.
Sense of peace. Yes. Like, do you remember when you noticed that you were peaceful?
When I stepped into the inner room,
When you stepped into the inner room. Nice.
bathed in the warm light.
And bathed in the warm light. So a sense of peace. Yes. And you became sleepy. Did you know that you were sleeping, or did you wake up and then realized you had slept? Okay. What else did you feel or think? I mean, even if it was like, why are we doing this? And or if your mind was giving you trouble, or any of the experiences that you had. Yes?
I was noticing the music more than your words. I don't know if that was the volume difference.
I see. You noticed the music more than the words I was speaking. Okay. Good to know. What else?
I think it kind of gives you like a little moment of freedom from the rest of your life's distractions.
Yeah.
You have like this meeting that you need to prepare for and all sorts of things, but give your mind like a little brief moment of peace.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. This is one of the ideas is when I mentioned the difference between your life and your life situation, and that they're different, and that those things that we're seeing are not us because we're the witness, we're seeing them. When I'm in my life situation means it's as if I'm watching a movie. Have you ever been to a movie? Sit down, lights go out, screen comes on, the plot unfolds, and then suddenly you're inside the movie. Any time that were you carried away by it? Which movie was it? Can you remember becoming emotional? I remember when I was a kid, there was a movie called Born Free. It was about these lions. This woman raised these lions, and then she had to let them go. I can't remember the exact plot, but I do remember as a kid getting really attached to the movie and even crying when one of the lions got killed, something like that.
Elsie?
Yeah. Hey, good. Yeah, Elsie. And I'm sure all of you have had some experience like that. So the yoga literatures say that our life is much like a movie. I'm the life, I'm the watcher, I'm the witnesser, but I'm watching the movie on the screen. And I become absorbed in it, and I'm carried away. Sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm sad. And this relief that you mentioned is an opportunity to step back. It's like you step back from the movie and see, okay, you objectify everything and you see it's light on a screen. And noticing that there's a difference between my life and my life situation, between me and all the events that are apparently unfolding in my life. It gives a sense of relief for a moment. And that's something that anyone can do by walking through that door and experiencing for oneself that I have my inner life and there's all the other things that are going on. And it also means, as I mentioned at the end of the meditation, when you step back out into your life situation, you can maintain a semblance of unattachment. And this actually makes you more proficient. You can be more effective in the duties that you're doing in your life situation when you have that slight sense of unattachment to what's going on. Because you're not reactive, but you're able to deal with the situations in a much more objective way. Does that make sense? Okay. So here are a few more lessons. Okay, thank you. And that is that the focus mode is where our real achievement takes place. When we practice focusing, even if we take just a few minutes every day to get into that space of seeing that we are not the body, but we're actually the witness within the body. And we become aware of our consciousness. And we practice expanding our attention span. We become familiar with this focus mode. We become much more effective in all the other things we do in a worldly sense as well. In fact, many studies on learning say that we really do learn when we're highly perceptive, and being highly perceptive means being focused. You're aware of what you're doing. Also, great discoveries come only to the prepared mind. Louis Pasteur said this, and it's a very instructive statement that as we prepare our mind, we become more aware of opportunity in our life. When our mind is not prepared, when we're in a distracted state, there's a way in which we can miss a lot of the great opportunities that come our way. But when the mind is prepared and alert, then when things come, we see them and we're able to take advantage of them. Patience, although it sounds like something like, where do you get it? Can you get it from the, what are the name of these drugstores here? CVS. If you go to CVS and can you give me some patience? They won't know what you're talking about, first of all. Second of all, they won't have it. It's the most valuable substance to be able to have patience and allowing time to take its course, and seeing the power of these two things together is an important lesson in mindfulness. And prioritization. This comes to the crane who waits for the right fish to come and then strikes. So you can't have everything. Where would you put it? That's an old joke by Stephen Wright, but I always appreciate it. When the mind says, I want everything, for instance, like with books, you can collect so many books. I have so many books. I got it from my parents. They love books. And I just think I'll never have time to read all this book. But still my mind I want all this knowledge so that I can control the world. And I remember being in school too. Every time I'd finish semester, or every time I'd start a semester, I was already behind because the information comes out so fast. And I always kept my textbooks afterwards because I thought, someday I'll catch up and I'll learn everything that's in this. But we can't have everything. Where would you put it? Mindfulness means, being okay to let it go and not try to get every single thing. You're okay as you are if you're in the moment. You're tasting nectar right there. You don't have to grab every single thing. And as Stephen Covey used to say, don't major in minor things. There are many minor issues that come into our life. So prioritize. Find out what's the most important thing and then major in that. And he also said the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. Everyone say this one. Try it one more time with a little more gusto. Come on, this is Salesforce here. Come on. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. It's a good mantra. Because oftentimes little things come and they really bother us and they really distract us. But if you remember this mantra, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. Find out what the main thing is, and one of the ways you can do that is by going into this mindfulness state and realizing that happiness comes from within. And that brings us to our last lesson, and that's from the musk deer. So the mythical musk deer, actually it's not mythical, there is a musk deer. It emits a scent that is otherworldly. In fact, it's a much sought after scent, musk. You've heard of musk, right? It's used in a lot of the perfumes of the world and so forth. It comes from a deer. And so it is said that the musk deer spends its life searching for the scent. It comes from its own navel. But it looks in caves, goes into the waters, the rivers, goes to the top of mountains, and it's always searching. Where does that beautiful scent come from? It doesn't know. It comes from its own navel. So in a similar way, I'm looking in various places in this world to try to find that sense of completeness, of happiness, but all the while it's coming from myself. It's inside. It's going through that door where my pure consciousness resides, where I can actually become aware of my own awareness. I am a unit of awareness, and when I become aware of it, it's the most nectarian kind of meditation that we can have. So yoga wisdom too is a very simple thing, and it's almost cliche. In fact, it is. Happiness comes from within. But accessing that on a regular basis is really the key to success in life, to be able to actually taste it and not just say it. It's not theoretical, but actually experience it from oneself. Yoga wisdom says the mind should be trained so it can become like a flame in a windless place. It's not being blown by the various thoughts that come through and keep it out of balance. So by practicing this mindfulness, one comes to this point of being able to still the mind. And the Yoga Wisdom 4 says yoga is the stilling of the changing state of the mind, and followed up by, when that is accomplished, the seer abides in his own true nature. So our true nature is actually blissful. There's a book. In fact, I met the author. She spoke somewhere where we had some other things to do, and the name of her book was Happy for No Reason. Wasn't the name of the book? Happy for No Reason. I didn't read the book, but the title was enough for me. And this is the idea, when one's situated in one's own true nature, which is not far away, it's right there, it's who we are, then one experiences natural happiness. It's not something to be gained from outside ourselves. So look inside yourself for real happiness. This is the lesson of the must deer. Don't look everywhere else. In fact, there was a song, Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places. And so we learned today lessons from the earth, tree, hawk, crane, and musk deer. And now we'll take a few final reflections. What did you hear that stuck with you that you're taking away that you can use tomorrow or today? Give me one thing. Yes?
I really liked the reminder that there are plenty of things coming my way, because it's a good reminder, because a lot of times you get stuck thinking that I don't want to let things go because I've worked so hard to accumulate it, or I've invested so much, and the reminder that there are plenty of other things coming your way, it just kind of almost like is a nice permission to like
Drop the mouse.
And then if you drop the mouse, that's only when it can.
Yes. And I was thinking recently, we thought on the way over here about Steve Jobs, how he had started the Apple Corporation. He had invested his whole life and his whole identity in it, what to speak of his wealth. And then when he hired Scully as a CEO, he came in and fired Steve Jobs. And Steve talked about this at his commencement speech at Stanford. He said he thought his life was over. But then when he actually dropped the mouse, he thought, hey, this happened. This actually happened. It's not something that can be reversed right now. And then he dropped it. And he said, okay, I let go. And in that moment when he let go, then all the creative energy that was there to start Apple in the first place came into his mental system. And he started Pixel, which is even bigger than Apple at the time, and many other great achievements, what to speak of getting back into Apple again later. And so that creative force of the universe and the actual awareness of abundance in our life comes to us when we're able to learn the lesson of dropping the mouse. Don't try to hold on to every little thing, because we can't anyway. And now I'm going to tell you, because I promised, about the story of preemptive giving. Are you ready? Yes. This actually happened to me. So in India, where I go regularly, there's a famous pilgrimage place where there's a pond. It's a sacred pond, and you can go in that pond, take your bath, and then do your mantras and things like that. It's very purifying. And so I go there usually during October or November. It's a special time of year. And I live in an ashram. So after I live in the ashram, I always give a donation to the ashram as a token of thanks and gratitude, and help support the ashram. So I got there, and on the first day, I went down to this pond. And I had all my stuff with me. And to go in this special pond, you have to take your clothes off, except you wear what's called a gamcha. It's a piece of cloth you wear around your waist so that you're not immodest. And then you go into the pond. And I was in there doing my mantras and doing my meditation. I turned around, and all my stuff was gone. Not all my stuff in the whole world, but everything I was carrying with me when I walked down there, which was several miles. And that included, my clothes and the things I had in my pocket, my pen, my pad, money, and things like that. Not all my money, but, there was some walking around money there. So I looked around. I asked a few people. I asked the monkeys, did you take it? They said, we didn't take it. We would have if we knew it was there. And it was just gone. And so then I had to walk home a couple miles with just this gamcha on. And normally in India, these sages, they walk around with a very simple cloth on. They don't keep any. So I pretended, I was like one of these guys. Yeah, I'm cool. I'm all right. So I got back to the ashram, and normally I wait till the end of my stay to give a donation. But this time, I gave it immediately after I got back to the ashram. Why did I do that? Why did I give it now instead of at the end of 30 days?
Because there was a reminder for you to give it at the time. And the time
I was fully aware of the fact that anything could be taken at any time. And normally I'm not thinking like that. I think whatever I have, this is mine forever. I get to keep it. Whatever it is, my, a spouse or my car or, my money or my job or whatever. I'm thinking this is just mine. I have it. But at any time you can turn around and just gone. Just gone. And it's gone for good. So from this I learned the great lesson that I call preemptive giving. If you give it away before it's taken away, you get credit. If it's taken away from you unceremoniously when you're not ready for it, you don't get any credit. You're just like everybody else. Everyone goes, that poor guy, like the rest of us. So a life of preemptive giving, which means realize I'm just passing through this world. Think like the earth. This is a temporary place. Everything that I have here is going to shift. Use it in service, like the tree. Do for your higher good and to help other people in service. Then you get credit. The most famous people in the world, I would argue, are those who gave their life in selfless service. So these are basic lessons that we can draw from nature, and we can remember that actually our real happiness dwells within ourselves. The life situation that's going on around me is a temporary film that I'm watching, and be situated in the self and feel real happiness. I thank you very much. You're the cream of the cream here, not just in the Bay Area or in America, but in the world. And the fact that you took your valuable time to come out here today to give your full attention is very touching to me, and I'm very, very grateful to you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Armarman, Natari Armarman, Natari Armarman, Natari Armarman, hey, Natari Armarman, Natari Armarman, Natari Armarman, Natari Armarman.